He had just weeks to live. No girl had ever held his hand, let alone kissed him. But when the young nurse leaned in and said, "Tell me what you want most before you go," what he said shocked her and changed both their lives forever. Where are you watching from? Please comment below and don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Miriam walked into Ward 6 like every other day, her white shoe squeaking against the shiny hospital tiles. The place smelled of antiseptic and sadness. The room on the far right, room 609, was quiet. No visitors ever came. No flowers. No balloons. Only the beeping of the floor drip and the soft rustle of sheets. Chinedu laid there, a thin boy swallowed by oversized hospital blankets. His head was bald now, his cheeks hollow. His eyes, though weak, still held a bit of wonder whenever Miriam entered. At first, she thought it was normal patient admiration. But after weeks of silence and small talk, she realized this boy had no one. Not even a mother who called. Not even a friend who texted. Miriam checked his vitals while pretending not to notice the way he tried to smile. His voice was barely above a whisper when he spoke. How long do I have left?" She froze. She hated these questions. "I'm not the doctor, Chinedu. But you know." Her lips pressed together. "Maybe a few weeks. Maybe more. Let's just focus on today." He looked away. A single tear rolled down his cheek, but he quickly wiped it with his wrist like a child hiding from punishment. "I've never kissed a girl," he said suddenly. The words shocked her. She looked at him, heart pounding. Was this a joke? No. He looked serious. Embarrassed even. "I'm 23, he whispered. "And I'm dying. I never even talked to a girl properly. Until you." Miriam felt something sharp twist inside her chest. The next day, it rained heavily. Lagos traffic was hell, but Miriam made it to the hospital, soaked and late. She didn't even bother changing into dry scrubs. Her mind was still stuck on what Chinedu had said the day before. She walked into room 609, and he was awake, waiting. "I thought maybe you wouldn't come back," he said softly. Miriam smiled weakly. "I always come back." He stared at her, then slowly reached under his pillow and brought out a folded note. "I wrote something in case I get too weak to speak." She opened it. Her eyes scanned the trembling handwriting. "If I leave this world without ever feeling close to a woman, I will feel like I never lived. I'm not asking for much. Just a few minutes of closeness. Something real. Please don't be angry." She folded the paper slowly, hands shaking. Her chest felt tight. "Miriam." "Chinedu, what exactly are you asking?" He looked down. "I want to know what it feels like. Just to be held. Touched. Not like a nurse to a patient, but like someone who sees me as a man. Even for 5 minutes." Her mouth opened, but no words came. "This is wrong," she finally said. He nodded slowly. "I know. But I'm dying. And I don't want to die without ever knowing what that feels like." She walked out. Her hands were cold. Her brain screamed no. Boundaries. Ethics. Law. But her heart broke for the boy with no visitors and a dying wish that had nothing to do with medicine. Miriam didn't sleep that night. She sat on her small couch in her one-bedroom flat in Yaba, hands in her hair, replaying Chinedu's words over and over again. Just to be held. Not like a nurse to a patient, but like someone who sees me. She wasn't stupid. She knew what everyone would say. Unprofessional. Dangerous. Shameful. But they didn't know him. They didn't see the way he smiled through pain. They didn't hear how soft and scared his voice got when he talked about death. The next morning, she avoided room 609. She told Nurse Amaka to check his vitals. She needed space to think. Later that afternoon, when she finally entered his room, he looked disappointed but not surprised. "I scared you," he said, voice low. "I ruined everything." "You didn't ruin anything," she replied softly. He turned his face to the wall. I'm just a dying boy asking too much. No, she whispered. You're a dying boy asking for something human. They sat in silence for a while. The machines hummed. The air conditioner rattled. Finally, she took his hand. His eyes widened. Let's talk about boundaries, Chinedu. Let's talk about what closeness really means for you. And what's safe for both of us. His lips trembled. You mean it? I'm here, aren't I? That evening, after most visitors had left the ward and the hallway lights were dimmed, Miriam sat on the edge of Chinedu's bed. She wasn't wearing her usual white uniform. She had changed into a plain blue sweater and jeans, something that made her feel less like a nurse, more like a woman. I don't want to do anything wrong, she told him. So you'll have to tell me what you need. And I will decide how far is safe. He nodded slowly, his fingers twitching nervously. I just want to feel human. Not like a sick body lying on a bed. I want to talk, laugh. Maybe lie beside someone and not feel like a monster. She swallowed hard. I can do that. For a while. She lay beside him gently, careful not to press against any tubes. His body was fragile. But his heart was beating so fast, she could feel it through the mattress. He turned his head slowly to look at her. You smell like coconut oil, he whispered. She laughed softly. Because I use it. It was the first time he smiled without pain. They talked for hours. He told her about the girls he liked in school but never had the courage to approach. She told him about her failed engagement to a doctor who chose a hospital in Canada over her. At some point, he closed his eyes. This is more than I dreamed of, he said. Thank you. Then he slowly reached for her hand under the covers. She didn't pull away. In that small, quiet hospital room, something happened. Not physical. Not sexual. But deeply emotional. A moment so rare that it felt sacred, two broken hearts sharing warmth before one of them stopped beating forever, but just outside the door. Nurse Amaka had seen everything and she wasn't smiling. The next morning, Miriam walked into the nurse's station feeling unusually light. She had barely slept, but for the first time in weeks, her heart didn't feel heavy. Chinedu had smiled. He had rested peacefully. He had finally felt seen, but Nurse Amaka was already waiting at the desk, arms folded, eyes cold. I saw you, Amaka said bluntly. Miriam paused. What? Don't act dumb. Room 609. You were lying beside the patient. Miriam felt the air leave her lungs. You don't understand what that was, she said quietly. Oh, I understand perfectly, Amaka snapped. You've crossed a line. You're emotionally attached to a terminal patient, and now you're doing things that can get you fired. Or worse. It wasn't what it looked like, Miriam tried to explain. It never is, Amaka said, picking up her chart. People lose their jobs for less. Just remember that. Miriam stood there, frozen. Her hands began to shake. Later that day, Dr. Felix called her into his office. I've been hearing things, he said, not looking up from his computer. Things I hope are not true. She stood stiff, holding her breath. I don't mix rumors with judgment, he continued. But if you let emotions cloud your professionalism again, I will have no choice but to reassign you. Miriam nodded slowly, her face burning. As she walked back to room 609, she saw Chinedu's face light up when he saw her. But she couldn't smile back. Not this time. The hospital walls suddenly felt smaller, and a storm was quietly brewing. That evening, Miriam sat by Chinedu's bed again, but this time her posture was stiff, guarded. He noticed immediately. Did I get you in trouble? He asked softly. Miriam nodded. Someone saw us. He swallowed. I'm sorry. I didn't mean no. Chinedu, she cut in gently. It's not your fault. You were honest about what you wanted. I'm the one who made a choice. He looked down. So, does this mean you won't come again? I didn't say that, she replied. But we have to be more careful now. People don't understand what this is. What is this? He asked suddenly, his voice cracking. Is it pity? Is it just a nurse trying to be nice before I die? Miriam flinched. Don't say that. Then tell me, he whispered. What am I to you? Her eyes filled with tears and she stood up, unable to answer. I'll come back later. But as she turned to leave, he grabbed her wrist. I don't have later, he cried. I'm not trying to trap you. I'm trying to feel something before I go. She stood there, stunned, unable to move. Behind her, the door creaked slightly open. Someone had been listening. Again, the next morning, Miriam found an envelope on her locker. No name. Just hospital letterhead. Her hands trembled as she opened it. This is an official warning regarding behavior observed in room 609. You are advised to maintain professional distance with patients at all times. Any further emotional involvement may result in disciplinary action or termination. Her heart dropped. No signature. No discussion. Just a threat in black and white. She sat on the locker bench, frozen. She thought about quitting. About walking away from the hospital, from the pain, from the looks Amaka gave her. But then she thought of Chinedu, the boy who never had a birthday cake, the boy who smiled when she walked in, even when his body was falling apart. She knew she couldn't leave. She folded the paper and slid it into her bag. When she looked up, Amaka was watching from across the room with a smug grin. You don't belong in that room anymore, she said under her breath. Miriam stood up slowly. Then maybe that room is the only place I truly belong. That evening, Miriam walked into room 609 with her chest tight and her heart heavy. Chinedu looked weaker. His skin was pale. His lips were dry. The cancer was winning. She sat down beside him and tried to smile. Rough day, he asked gently. You have no idea, she whispered. I'm sorry. She shook her head. No. Chinedu. I'm not sorry for being here. I'm sorry I didn't come sooner. I let fear get in the way. He reached for her hand. I thought maybe you were gone for good. She squeezed it tightly. I couldn't. Not until I see this through. He looked up at her with eyes full of sadness, but also something else. Peace, Miriam, he said, voice trembling. Can I ask you for one more thing? She didn't answer immediately. Anything, she finally said. I want one night, he whispered. Just one night to feel like I'm not sick. Not dying. Just normal. Tears filled her eyes. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded shirt, a small comb, and a pack of cologne wipes. Then let's make tonight count. She helped him sit up, cleaned him, dressed him, and combed what little hair he had left. She ordered his favorite jollof rice and fried chicken from a small buka down the street. They shared it from one plate on the hospital tray. He laughed when the pepper made him cough. She wiped his chin like a mother and a friend and something else all at once. Later that night, she laid beside him again. They held hands in silence, and for the first time, he looked like a young man, not a patient, not dying. Just living, if only for a moment. But outside the hospital, someone had already leaked a photo, and in the morning, everything would fall apart. The next day, Miriam arrived at the hospital just before sunrise. Her feet felt heavy, but her heart was light. Last night had been beautiful, tragic, yes, but beautiful. She had given Chinedu what he asked for, a night where he felt alive, loved, and free, but the peace didn't last. She was barely through the lobby when her phone started buzzing, calls, texts, even Facebook notifications. Then a message came in from an unknown number. One photo. Just one. It was blurry, but clear enough. Miriam lying beside Chinedu in the hospital bed. Her arm around him. His head on her chest. Eyes closed. And no context. No caption. Just disaster waiting to happen. She rushed up to the 6th floor, praying. No one else had seen it. Too late. Nurse Amaka stood by the nurse's station, holding her phone like a trophy. Her voice rang through the hallway. So this is what we do now, Miriam. Sleeping beside patients. Do you know how this looks? Several nurses turned to look. Dr. Felix came out of his office with a confused frown. What's going on here? He demanded. She crossed the line, Amaka said, holding up her phone. This is what she's been doing during night shifts. Miriam's mouth went dry. Dr. Felix looked at the photo, his face changing slowly from confusion to disappointment. Miriam. My office. Now. Dr. Felix sat behind his desk like a judge handing out a sentence. His voice was flat, his eyes unreadable. Do you have any explanation for this? Miriam sat across from him, her palms sweaty, her throat dry. Yes. But it won't sound good. Because when it comes to love, or kindness, or just trying to give someone a moment of peace, nothing ever sounds good. This is not about love, he replied. This is about ethics. About trust. About the reputation of this hospital. She met his eyes. Do you know that boy has no family? That he was going to die without ever being hugged like a human being? That he was ashamed of dying a virgin, of never being touched, of never being seen? Dr. Felix rubbed his temples. You think I don't know that? I've treated over 300 patients like him. You think I didn't cry when my first one passed away? But you're not allowed to break the rules because your heart is soft. I didn't break him, she said, voice shaking. I made him feel like a person. He leaned forward, voice suddenly sharp. And what if someone accuses you of something? Worse, Miriam. What if his condition suddenly worsens and fingers are pointed at you? Did you think of that? She swallowed hard. I did. And I still chose to be there. He looked at her for a long moment, then stood up. You're suspended for now. Until this is sorted. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. She just nodded, stood up, and walked out of the office. As she passed room 609, she saw Chinedu sleeping peacefully. He didn't know yet, but when he woke up, she wouldn't be the one beside him, and no one would tell him why. Chinedu woke up in the late afternoon, groggy and confused. The fluorescent lights above his bed flickered as usual, and the air smelled like bleach and salt water. But something was off. And no gentle knock. No soft humming voice. No Miriam. He waited. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Still no one came. Instead, Nurse Amaka entered with a tray of food. Where's Miriam? He asked, his voice weak but urgent. She's not coming, Amaka replied sharply, placing the tray down without looking at him. His stomach dropped. Is she okay? She's suspended, Amaka said flatly, pulling out his chart. You should have known better. Chinedu's eyes widened. Because of me? She broke the rules, she said. And she let her emotions cloud her duty. Chinedu tried to sit up, but pain shot through his chest. Where is she now? I need to see her. Amaka didn't respond. She just turned and walked out, leaving him in stunned silence. For the first time in weeks, the room felt cold again. His chest tightened, not from the cancer, but from a deep, unbearable ache. He reached under his pillow and pulled out the letter he had written Miriam the night before. Thank you for seeing me. Not as a patient, but as a person. I never thought I'd feel love in my final days, but you gave me that. And that makes dying less scary. Tears streamed down his face. She didn't even get to read it. Miriam sat in her apartment with her phone on silent. She hadn't eaten all day. Her hair was tied in a loose bun, her eyes red from crying. She had become the center of a quiet scandal. The hospital board had begun an internal review. Her name was whispered across break rooms. Her patients were reassigned. And worst of all, she couldn't see Chinedu. She paced her small kitchen, thinking of 100 things she could have done differently. But regret was too late. Then her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't know. He hasn't eaten since you left. He won't talk to anyone. He's asking for you. It was from a junior nurse, someone who had always looked up to her. Miriam dropped the phone. Her hands trembled as she reached for her bag. She didn't care about suspension. She didn't care about the rules anymore. She had made a promise to a dying boy, and no piece of paper was going to stop her from keeping it. 10 minutes later, she was on a bus to the hospital, her hoodie up, heart racing. By the time she reached the back entrance, it was almost midnight. She knew she could lose everything, but all she could think about was room 609. And the boy who believed in her. Miriam slipped through the back gate of the hospital like a shadow. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it in her ears. Every footstep echoed too loudly on the tiled floors. She kept her hoodie low and avoided eye contact with the janitor pushing a mop down the hallway. She knew the risk. Security could call the supervisor. One wrong move and she could lose her license forever, but she didn't care. Room 609 was dimly lit when she reached it. The door was slightly open. She stood there for a second, her hand on the frame, breathing in. Then she stepped inside. Chinedu was curled on his side, thin and pale, his chest barely rising. When he saw her, he blinked twice, like he thought he was hallucinating. Miriam. She nodded. He burst into tears. I thought I lost you, he whispered. They said you wouldn't come back. She rushed to him and held his hands tight. I had to, Chinedu. I couldn't leave you like that. He looked at her. Like a boy who had just been rescued from a storm. I thought I was going to die alone again. You're not alone, she said, brushing his hair gently. I'm here now. And I'm not going anywhere tonight. They talked for hours about school, the places he wished he had seen, the books he started but never finished. At one point, he grew quiet and turned to face her fully. I know I don't have long, he whispered. The pain is getting worse. Miriam nodded, tears silently falling. I need to ask you one last thing. And if you say no, I'll still understand. She looked into his eyes, heart in her throat. Tell me. I want to die with your arms around me. Not alone. Not in pain. Just like this. Miriam felt her soul crack in half. It wasn't about sex. It wasn't about crossing any line. It was about warmth, about dignity. About helping someone leave the world with peace instead of fear. She climbed gently onto the bed and wrapped her arms around him, pulling his fragile body close. His breathing slowed, steady but tired. I can feel your heartbeat, he said. I'm not going anywhere, she whispered, holding him tighter. He smiled. The kind of smile only someone who had carried too much sadness could wear in their final hour, and in that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the hospital rules, not the consequences, not the eyes watching from the shadows, only love. Only goodbye. Only now. But what they didn't know was that Dr. Felix had walked past the room and had stopped and had seen everything. Dr. Felix stood outside room 609, frozen. His hand hovered near the doorknob, but he didn't move. Through the small glass panel, he saw them. Miriam curled protectively around Chinedu, the boy's eyes closed. His frail chest rising and falling against hers. The sight should have triggered outrage. Suspension. Termination, but instead, it triggered a memory. Years ago, Felix had watched his own mother die in a government hospital. She was alone when it happened. No one had held her hand. No one had even closed her eyes. She had died surrounded by strangers in white coats who were too busy to notice her last breath. And now, in this moment, Felix saw something different. Something he had never given his mother. Dignity. Peace. Humanity. He turned away slowly, his face unreadable. No note. No call. No security. He simply walked back to his office and shut the door. By dawn, the ward was quiet. Miriam hadn't moved all night. She held Chinedu the way someone holds a newborn, gently, with meaning, and with unspoken prayers. Around 6:12 a.m., Chinedu stirred weakly and whispered, "Thank you." For what? She asked, kissing his knuckles. For proving I was worthy of love, even if just for a moment. She pressed her forehead against his. You've always been worthy, Chinedu. The world just didn't look close enough. He smiled, a real one. No tears. No fear. Then his eyes fluttered closed, his chest rose once, then again, slower, then it stopped. Miriam sat there for a long time, frozen in the silence. There were no machines to scream. No alarms to go off. Only her breathing and his stillness. She kissed his forehead and whispered, "Fly safe." And finally, she reached for the letter he had once hidden under his pillow. She opened it with trembling fingers. If I die with your arms around me, then I died the luckiest boy alive. She clutched it to her chest, tears soaking through the ink. Then she stood up and looked around the room, still warm with his presence, and she knew her life would never be the same again. The hospital was never truly silent, but room 609 had never felt so still. A junior nurse entered to check on Chinedu. She paused at the door, her eyes widening when she saw Miriam sitting calmly by the bed, holding the boy's lifeless hand. "Emma," she stuttered. "He's gone," Miriam whispered. Within minutes, the ward was alive with whispers. Nurses moved quickly. A death form was printed. Sheets were drawn. A body bag was prepared. Miriam remained quiet. She watched them wheel him away like cargo, no ceremony, no pause. And with each step they took, it felt like they were rolling away a part of her. In the hallway, Nurse Amaka stood with her arms folded. I hope it was worth it, she said coldly. Miriam didn't look at her. She didn't even blink. Yes, she said quietly. It was. Amaka scoffed and walked away, but not before muttering, "You're finished." Later that afternoon, Miriam received an official summons to appear before the hospital's ethics board. The conference room was small, but the tension made it feel suffocating. 5 chairs. 1 table. 4 faces she recognized from higher offices, and one, Dr. Felix, who sat at the end, arms crossed. Miriam sat opposite them, her hands folded tightly in her lap. One of the board members cleared her throat. "Nurse Miriam, you are here today to respond to reports and visual evidence suggesting you engaged in an inappropriate and emotionally unethical relationship with a terminal patient under your care." Miriam looked up, calm but tired. "I understand. You admit to lying beside the patient, touching him, speaking to him in ways beyond your professional duty." "I don't just admit it," she said softly. "Shown it." The room stirred. "I gave a dying boy the peace he begged for," she continued. "I didn't seduce him. I didn't violate him. I sat beside him when no one else did. I held him when no one else dared. I gave him the gift of dying with love." Dr. Felix leaned forward. "And what if that patient had misconstrued your kindness? What if your touch had been reported as something else? Do you realize the danger?" Miriam nodded slowly. "Yes. But I also know the danger of dying alone. He didn't just want physical touch, he wanted dignity. And I gave it to him, knowing the cost." There was a long pause, then Dr. Felix spoke again, this time quietly. "I saw you." She turned sharply. "You what?" "That night," he said. "I passed by room 609. I saw you holding him. I saw the way he rested. And I remembered how my own mother died, alone, cold, and surrounded by silence." Everyone in the room went quiet. Dr. Felix turned to the rest of the board. "I will not recommend termination." Gasped. He continued, "However, a formal letter of caution will be placed in her file. No suspension. No dismissal. Because what she gave that boy," he paused, "was what medicine often forgets, heart." Miriam's eyes filled with tears, not because she had won, but because someone had finally understood. 2 weeks passed. The sheets in room 609 were changed. A new patient occupied the bed. The hallway went on like nothing had happened. But Miriam still felt it, every time she walked past the door, every time she passed the nurse's station where whispers still hovered like dust. Then one rainy Thursday morning, she received an envelope. It had her name on it.no stamp. No hospital logo. Just a note in crooked handwriting, "For Miriam. Please read this after I'm gone." Her hands shook as she opened it. "Dear Miriam, if you're reading this, I'm no longer here. But don't cry for me. Because for the first time, I didn't feel like a ghost walking through life. I never got to be someone's boyfriend, or go on a date, or hold a girl's hand at the cinema. But I got something even better. I was seen. Truly seen, and you did. That the night you held me, I felt peace, not from the medicine, not from the morphine, but from your heart. I left something behind for you. Not much, but I hope it reminds you that what you gave me matters more than any rule or policy. ***. Thank you for making me feel like I mattered. *** With all the love I didn't get to give, Chinedu." Folded inside the letter was a photo, the two of them, taken by one of the junior nurses quietly one night. He was smiling with her hand in his head resting on her shoulder. On the back, he had written, "You gave me something cancer couldn't take, joy." Later that month, Miriam received a call from a law firm she didn't recognize. At first, she thought it was a scam. But when she arrived at their office, she was handed a sealed legal envelope. The lawyer smiled softly. This was part of Chinedu's last request. Miriam frowned. "I don't understand. He didn't have family. He didn't have money." The lawyer opened a folder and slid a document across the table. "Actually," he said, "Chinedu had something he never told anyone about. Before his illness worsened, he started an online journal under a fake name. He talked about his pain, his loneliness, and eventually, about you. The blog had gone viral, thousands of people read it. Donations poured in. One particular post, "The nurse who held me," had been shared over 300,000 times. He asked that whatever money came in be turned into something meaningful. Miriam opened the second envelope. Her eyes widened. $4.2 million, enough to change lives. Chinedu wanted it to start a small foundation, the lawyer said. One that offers emotional companionship to dying patients. Volunteers. Art therapy. Safe spaces. He named it the Last Hug Project. Miriam pressed the letter to her chest. This wasn't just closure. This was Chinedu's way of saying, "I'm still here." As she stepped out into the Lagos sun, the world felt a little lighter, not because the pain was gone, but because love had turned it into something that could grow. Within days of the Last Hug Project launch, word spread fast. It started with a simple Instagram post, a photo of Miriam holding the printed letter Chinedu had written, standing beneath a signboard that read, "The Last Hug Project in loving memory of Chinedu." The caption read, "He didn't die famous, but he died seen. This foundation will make sure no patient ever dies feeling invisible again." In less than 24 hours, the post went viral. News bloggers picked it up. One headline read, "Nurse risked career to fulfill dying boy's final wish. Now she's changing lives." People were moved. Some cried. Some called her a hero. Others didn't. A popular journalist aired a segment on national TV, asking, did she go too far? Should a nurse ever get that close to a patient? And just like that, the backlash started. Where were the boundaries? Is this love or pity? Was it ethical or emotional manipulation? Miriam stayed silent at first. She didn't owe the world an explanation, but when anonymous threats started arriving in her inbox and the hospital board requested a second review, she knew she couldn't hide anymore. She needed to speak her truth, not just for herself, but for Chinedu and every dying person who ever wished for more than a sterile goodbye. The studio was cold. The host was a woman named Taupe, sharp, poised, and known for asking uncomfortable questions with a smile. Miriam sat under bright lights, her palms sweaty in her lap. Taupe leaned forward. "Nurse Miriam, did you fall in love with Chinedu?" Miriam paused. "No," she said softly. "But I loved him." Taupe blinked. "Please explain." "I didn't love him romantically. I didn't cross that line. But I loved him as a human being. As someone who was stripped of dignity by his illness. Someone who reminded me what it means to be seen." Taupe tilted her head. "Many say what you did was inappropriate. That you violated hospital codes." Miriam nodded. "I did what my heart told me was right. And yes, I accept the consequences. But would I do it again?" She looked into the camera. In a heartbeat. Taupe leaned back, quiet for a moment. "And this foundation, the Last Hug Project, what's your goal?" "To send trained volunteers, nurses, caregivers, counselors into wards where patients have no family. To give comfort. To offer companionship. To remind them they are still human." By the end of the interview, the hashtag Last Hug Project was trending across Nigeria and Ghana. Donations tripled. Volunteers signed up in hundreds. The project gained international attention, and Miriam, once a whispered scandal in hospital corridors, had now become the face of something bigger than anyone imagined. But while the public praised her, a former hospital staff member, the one who leaked the first photo, was quietly planning to take legal action, not for justice, but for revenge. 1 week after the interview aired, Miriam came home to find an envelope taped to her front door. She stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside was a formal legal notice. A former hospital staff member, Nurse Amaka, was suing her for emotional distress, professional misconduct, and defamation by implication. The letter claimed that Amaka had been ostracized after the interview and was now facing disciplinary reviews for past behavior toward patients. Miriam read the words twice, then sank into a chair. A knock came at the door moments later. It was Tenny, a junior nurse who had once trained under her. She had become a volunteer for the Last Hug Project. "Ma, is it true?" she asked. "They say Amaka wants to take down the whole foundation." Miriam exhaled slowly. She wants to take me down. But the foundation? I built it on truth. She can't touch that. But if she wins? Tenny asked. They could shut it down, right? Miriam didn't answer. Her eyes drifted to the framed photo of Chinedu on her shelf. She whispered, then we fight. The courtroom was small, but packed with media and tension. Miriam sat at the front beside her lawyer. Her shoulders were straight, but her hands trembled beneath the table. Across the aisle, Amaka sat with her legal team. Her face was expressionless, cold, calculated. The judge called the room to order. Opening arguments began. Amaka's lawyer painted a picture of an emotionally reckless nurse who had blurred ethical lines, exposed the hospital to public scrutiny, and caused irreversible harm to Amaka's professional image. When it was Miriam's turn to speak, her lawyer rose and calmly addressed the court. Yes, boundaries were crossed. But not for gain, not for fame, and certainly not to shame others. Miriam acted in compassion. She made a dying boy feel human for the first time in his life. Murmurs filled the courtroom. Then Miriam was called to the stand. She stood tall, even as her voice cracked. I didn't do what I did to become a hero, she said. I did it because in that moment, nothing else mattered. Not rules. Not reputation. Just a young man begging not to die alone. The opposing counsel stood. And what about Nurse Amaka's suffering? Miriam turned to face Amaka directly. If speaking the truth hurt you, I'm sorry. But I won't apologize for showing kindness. I won't apologize for holding a hand that needed holding. Silence. Then, slowly, a few people in the back row stood up, then more. Patients. Volunteers. Nurses. Even a doctor. All wore t-shirts that read, I was seen. I was held. #LastHug Project. The judge banged the gavel for silence. But the message had already been delivered. This wasn't just Miriam's fight anymore. It had become a movement. The courtroom was still, heavy with anticipation. Every breath seemed louder. Every shift in a chair echoed like thunder. Miriam sat with her hands folded tightly, her eyes locked on the judge. Amaka avoided her gaze. The judge cleared her throat and read from the bench, this case is not just about law. It is about humanity. Nurse Miriam did cross professional lines. But in doing so, she provided care that transcended policy. Care that was not exploitative, but restorative. There is no evidence of harm to the patient. No financial gain. No proof of coercion or inappropriate conduct. The court hereby finds Nurse Miriam not guilty of misconduct or defamation. The lawsuit brought forward by Ms. Amaka is dismissed with no merit. A wave of emotion hit the room. Gasps. Cries. Applause. Miriam didn't move at first. She just sat there, stunned. Then her lawyer leaned in and whispered, you won. But it wasn't about winning. It was about justice, for Chinedu, for herself, and for every patient who had died without someone beside them. As she stood up, Amaka quickly walked out, her face dark with humiliation. Miriam didn't look back. She had no anger left in her, only purpose. A month later, Miriam returned to the hospital, not as a nurse, but as the founder of the Last Hug Project. She now wore civilian clothes, not scrubs. But the staff welcomed her differently. The ones who once whispered now stood and greeted her with respect. Room 609 had been turned into a comfort room, paintings on the wall, soft lighting, and a small bookshelf filled with letters, journals, and photos of Chinedu. She visited at Often Point one evening. A junior nurse ran up to her in the hallway. Ma. Please, you need to come. There's a boy in bed 9. No family. He keeps asking to speak to the nurse from the story. Miriam followed. Inside room 213, a teenage boy lay in bed, his chest rising and falling with difficulty. His name was Ibrahim. He had sickle cell complications. He was only 17. He turned his head slowly when she entered. You're her. She smiled. I'm Miriam. He blinked quickly, trying to fight his tears. I read about you and Chinedu. I don't want to die alone. You won't, she said, sitting beside him. He hesitated. Can you just stay here tonight? I can do more than that, she replied, holding his hand. I can make sure your story is remembered. That night, another boy found peace and the foundation grew stronger. It wasn't just about one final hug anymore. It was about hundreds of them. The last hug project exploded. By its third month, branches had opened in Port Harcourt, Accra, and even Nairobi. Miriam was flying out weekly, speaking at hospitals and training volunteers. Her days were filled with meetings, logistics, and press interviews. Everyone wanted to hear the story of the nurse who gave dignity to death. But somewhere along the way, she forgot to rest, forgot to eat well, forgot to breathe, and worst of all, she forgot Kelechi. Kelechi had been there from the beginning. A childhood friend turned quiet admirer. He had supported her during Chinedu's illness, held her hand through the first court hearing, stayed up building the foundation's website, waited patiently on the sidelines until he couldn't anymore. One evening, after a board meeting, Miriam returned home to find him packing his duffel bag. She froze at the door. "You're going somewhere?" He didn't look up. "Back to Abuja. Got a job offer. Good pay. Quiet life." "What?" Without even telling me. He looked at her finally, his eyes tired. "I did tell you, Miriam. Every day. But you were too busy saving everyone else to notice I was drowning." Her voice cracked. "You think this is easy for me? I'm carrying the weight of people's last wishes, Kelechi." "And who's carrying you?" he asked. "Because it sure as hell isn't me anymore." She stepped closer. "Please don't go. I love you," he said, voice raw. "But I won't be your ghost. I won't sit in the background while you give your soul to strangers." Then he kissed her forehead and left, and this time, Miriam was the one left behind. The days after Kelechi left were quiet. Not hospital quiet. Not death quiet. Just empty. Miriam still smiled at volunteers. Still gave speeches. Still answered emails, but inside, a part of her had gone cold. She had become what she used to treat, a hollow soul walking around, smiling for others, crying only in private. Her staff noticed it. Tenny, the once shy junior nurse, now a full coordinator, finally confronted her. "Ma, you built something incredible," she said. "But you're fading inside it." Miriam looked away. "I can't stop. Not now." "Yes, you can," Tenny replied. "You can rest. You can grieve. You can heal." That night, Miriam went to room 609, now painted soft yellow with curtains that fluttered gently with the breeze. She lit a candle beside Chinedu's photo, then she sat in silence, and for the first time in a long time, she wept, not because she had failed, but because she finally accepted she was human too, and even healers need healing. Months passed. The Last Hug project had now reached 6 African countries and was slowly expanding into low-income clinics in Europe. A Nigerian senator pledged a grant. A global health NGO invited Miriam to speak in Geneva. People called her the Angel of Goodbye. But behind the fame was a woman who still carried quiet sorrow. Miriam had not heard from Kelechi in 4 months. She kept the necklace he once gave her tucked in her purse, a tiny gold pendant with a single word etched in, still. Still breathing. Still hoping. Still. Miriam. One afternoon, after hosting a storytelling session with terminal children at a foundation site in Enugu, her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello. Hi. It's Kelechi." She froze. "I saw the Geneva feature," he continued. "You were incredible. But you didn't look happy." Her voice shook. "That's because I'm not. Not without you." A long pause. "I'm at your doorstep," he said softly. "I've been standing here for 20 minutes, trying to gather the courage to knock." Her eyes filled instantly. She stood up, heart racing. He was there, outside. Same backpack. Same shy smile. But this time, he wasn't walking away. "I don't need you to choose between love and legacy," he said. "You're allowed to have both." She stepped into his arms and whispered, "I thought I had to give all of me to the world. You just forgot the part of you that needs holding too." 1 year after Chinedu passed, Miriam stood before a crowd of over 1,000 in Lagos at the official launch of the Last Hug Center, a fully funded hospice built in his name. She walked to the podium slowly, holding a laminated letter. This, she began, was written by a boy the world almost ignored. A boy who reminded me what real care looks like. She read aloud asterisk to anyone who feels invisible. You are not. Someone will see you. Someone will hold you. Someone will remind you that you matter, and if no one else can, the Last Hug Project will. Asterisk. The crowd rose in standing ovation. Tears flowed. Arms hugged strangers. And in that moment, the room didn't feel like a hospital hall. It felt like a warm goodbye. Later that night, Miriam walked back to room 609, restored, quiet, filled with flowers and photos. She whispered, "We did it, Chinedu." And for the first time, she felt no ache in her chest, just peace, because in giving him a final gift, he had given her the courage to live again.